Hello everyone, I'm very happy to be here and talk to you about sustainability. But before we dive in, I want us to imagine. Imagine it's year 2080, the year of singularity. Various species have become extinct. Humans are more cyborg than biological. Heat waves plague Europe. We've lost control of our technology. Our best and brightest predict this year of singularity in 2080. But why? How did we get here? Today, we will understand that why through a 3-step process. Firstly, demystifying sustainability, understanding our current landscape, and what we can do now, and how our future really looks, potentially. So why sustainability? Why are we taking this lens to understand this potential future why? Because sustainability has allowed each and every one of us to be sitting here in this room. Throughout time, sustainability has been able to mitigate our risk, preserve our resources, and allow us to innovate and thrive. But what is sustainability anyways? We hear this term quite often, but we can't really grasp it. That's because sustainability is a verb. Sustainability is something we do. According to the United Nations, this is the official definition of sustainability. Essentially, being able to meet our needs today without sacrificing those of future generations. Any ideas on why this definition is so broad? Why doesn't it have resource management in it? Or people? Or energy? Any thoughts in the crowd? No wrong answer.
Because no one knows.
Because no one knows?
Sustainability can be related to a lot of things. Humans, nature, manufacturing. It's just a term that leads you to sort of like get that compromising piece.
Yeah, good concept there. Anybody else?
It's a sustainable definition.
It's a sustainable definition. Let's play with words there. The back.
A continuum.
Yeah.
So there's no beginning, there's no end.
Oh, I love that. Yes, it's a continuum. Similar to the theme of illusion, right? What is time? So it's such a broad definition because how do we measure it? So in order to measure sustainability, we've developed concepts, frameworks. I like to call this the foundation of sustainability, the backbone. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard it, ESG, environment, social, governance, structures. Our environment, okay, our energy, our resources, our water, our social, our society, our communities, and governance, our laws. But this is not the only structure by which we can measure sustainability. There's also ESE, which is environment, society, and economy. Or a very popularized framework as well, which is PPP, the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit. Another framework that's not pictured is the Stockholm framework. A university in Stockholm developed, if you can imagine, a 3-layered cake. At the bottom of the cake is the biosphere, meaning that we should prioritize, according to this framework, we should prioritize our natural resources, our water, our energy, our land. After the biosphere is the layer of society, our health as humanity, our education, our well-being, and at the very top lies the economy of this 3-layered cake. But again, these are just frameworks by which we measure sustainability. So what is right and what is wrong? That is for us to decide. And in order to understand how to make the right decision of what to measure, what not to measure, what framework to use. Now that we've conceptualized the idea of sustainability and we somewhat understand, some frameworks, some pillars, okay, environment, society, governance, economy, okay, we have these concepts around the term sustainability. We're gonna go back in time. And I mean very, very back, ancient times, to understand where did sustainability really come from? Has it always been here? Did we create it? We'll dive into the Industrial Revolution, the rise of the environmental movement, and then today, I like to call the alphabet of soups of sustainability. Can we even keep up? I can barely keep up, to be quite frank. Standards, laws, regulations, but again, how did we get here and why is it important? Why does it even matter? Our ancient civilizations, way back when we were cavemen, hunter and gatherers, we discovered communication. We discovered the power of collaboration, of communities. Why was this powerful? Because it allowed us to be efficient with our time, with our resources, and leap us into societies, into tribes. Our tribes became more sophisticated. We realized some people in the tribe have unique skill sets that we can harness and utilize to go faster, to produce more food, essentially becoming a wealthier tribe. Our tribes had time now to create language, to create culture, to create a moral value system known as religion. We then created laws. But some of these civilizations, if not majority of them, don't exist today. They've perished. Why? Lack of resource management and conflict, intertribal conflict. Let's fast forward into the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution. Here we truly harnessed the magic of technology. And we were really good at it. We were able to invent just amazing things. The steam engine, the car engine, the printing press, the mobilization of the assembly line, the moving assembly line. Faster, 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 dynamite. We invented dynamite. All of these inventions benefited us. We were comfortable, we were efficient, but through these efficiencies, there was also explosions. These explosions looked like the violation of worker rights and slavery, like lack of human rights for women, like environmental degradation. So with positives come negatives. The positives are the technologies that we invent, but they can also be negative because it's not merely the technology that is good or bad. It is how we've utilized it throughout the years. Then we have the rise of the environmental movement. We realized, hey, okay, we're going really fast, we have all these efficiencies, but there's some negative consequences to this, right? In 1962, the first environmental book was published called Silent Spring. This gave awareness to the world that, hey, maybe we shouldn't be using pesticides to try and battle malaria because there's some negative side effects to DDT. Right after that, in 1969, a really, I would say, media-worthy oil spill off the coast of Santa Barbara, California, ignited just a lot of political conflict or political debate around hey, we're not actually having the right rules and regulations around this. There was a lot of people really concerned about the environment. In 1970, President Richard Nixon enacted the first official agency for environmental protection. Soon after that, the Greenpeace movement rose in 1971. They were born because they were fighting, trying to stop the nuclear testing from happening. They obviously thought this was not correct, and without the proper regulation, something bad was bound to happen. And they were right. In 1986, one of the world's most horrible nuclear disasters happened, still in our memories today. Chernobyl. Right after Chernobyl, 1987, the word sustainability comes into the media. 1987. This is when the word sustainability comes into human consciousness. Prior to that, a lot of sustainability was happening. There was environmental concerns. We were also preserving our resources, and there was a lot of social issues. We had governing structures. But the word sustainability was popularized after all these events. So what does that mean for us in our relative current timeline? 1992, the UN gathered in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, and came up with the United Nations Convention on Climate Change. For the first time, nations said, hey, we should do something about this. We don't know what yet, but we should do something. After that, we have an influx of standards and regulations like the Global Reporting Initiative or the United Global Compact. In 2012, we have the Sustainable Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals are 17 goals, a bunch of pretty colors, all aimed at tackling massive global problems like poverty, like lack of education, like lack of access to water, like climate change, like increasing the economies of nations. Really massive, 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 ambitious targets. Shortly after that, in 2016, the Paris Agreement comes into play. The Paris Agreement in 2016 states that as nations, we will commit to ensuring that our global temperatures don't increase beyond 2 degrees Celsius or 1.5. This was 2016. Today, we've never met that target. Yet, the investment of renewable energy keeps increasing. And we have a bunch of awards, and if you say you're sustainable, wow, like you should get an award for that. But something's not adding up. Our data doesn't say that things are moving forward at the speed of which we're celebrating or investing. And a lot of that has to do with misconceptions. Sustainability, who here thought that sustainability was only about the environment? Don't be afraid, it's okay. No judgment zones. Maybe anybody? Okay, wow. Informed crowd. So everybody here knew that sustainability was about more than the environment. But these images at the top, I Googled them. I quite literally put sustainability, Google Images, and this came out. As you can see, it's someone holding a plant and earth with a wind turbine and some solar panels. Our search engines, and I'm sure ChatGPT at some point, depends what you prompt it with, right, what you ask, we'll talk to you about sustainability pertaining to the environment. Because this is all we hear, right? We hear climate, climate, climate. Actually, this week is London Climate Week. So there's a bunch of events around the city surrounding climate, if anyone's interested. A lot of them are open to the public. Yet, sustainability is a lot more than that. Sustainability is about the resilience of our societies. Sustainability is about the sustainability of our businesses in order to thrive and prosper. Another misconception is that sustainability is expensive. Has anyone heard that one before? Maybe some of us feel that one. So I'll give you a personal example that happened this morning to me. This morning I said, I really want to get to the museum on time. But where I come from, there's not a lot of public transportation. So any chance I get to use public transportation, I do. So for the past couple of days, I've used public transportation, which we all can agree is better for the environment. But this morning I said, I will take like an Uber, shared car. So I open the app and it gives me two options, right? It gives me this electric car option and it gives me this like standard car option. Can anyone guess which one was cheaper? The standard car. And in my mind, as a sustainability professional, right, I say, which option do I choose? Is it the cost? Was it the cost for me, right? Is a margin good enough? Do I feel better about the purchase? Is it, can I afford it? All these questions. So technically, in this moment, sustainability was more expensive. That's a fact. But it doesn't have to be, right? I always have a choice. I could have woken up earlier, and I could have taken public transportation, or my own 2 feet, if possible. So I think this idea that sustainability is expensive is an excuse. Is an excuse because, as mentioned in the Industrial Revolution, we've become accustomed to comfort and speed, and we can't innovate mentally out of that mindset. So now what? Are sustainable products always better? Depends who you ask. Depends who they're made for. And all of this has to do with comparability. And in order to compare, we must first understand. So if I would open this app, just like I did this morning, and I didn't have any understanding of what an EV car actually meant. What if I thought that, and which is very, very popular, by the way, I'm sure many of you have heard this argument, that the supply chain of electric vehicles is actually very dirty because they still mine lithium and there's still people's lives being impacted by it. And actually, it's like almost as bad as a normal car. Super standard mindset in this industry. And if I wasn't who I am, a professional in sustainability, I would agree with this because it makes logical sense. But the reality is that at the end of the life cycle, right? So if you can imagine a car's production, yes, there's some, I will admit, there is some things that need to be perfected in the EV space in order to make them better, right? The word better. But as a consumer, so once you're actually using the vehicle, right, till its end of life, till the vehicle doesn't work anymore, it is actually producing less emissions than a normal car. But again, this is all based on my understanding of this industry. I cannot speak to a crowd of formulists and chemists about what ingredient is best based on its sustainable journey. But you know best because you are the experts. Now we'll dive into our current landscape. So we understand the conceptual definition of sustainability. We know it's not just environment. We also kind of understand some misconceptions that we should maybe look out for. Now what? Where are we today? How can we do something now? How can we understand where we are now? there are a few global issues that concern us the most, especially in this room, which is biodiversity, climate change, resource mismanagement, and an underlying theme of social inequalities. I say underlining because all these environmental issues, similar to the three-layered cake, have society implications on top of them. For example, as featured in the Adina's Trends report, there is a company called Palmless, very innovative. Instead of using palm oil for their ingredient in their products, they've designed a bio-based, similar ingredient out of yeast. So they've completely avoided palm oil through this innovation, this new derivative. What does that mean? What is their impact through this innovation? That means that they will no longer potentially do land grabs to over-farm to be able to produce palm oil. They will no longer cause potential biodiversity loss from lands and have some of those lands preserved. Because now that's being done in a lab. Not only is it being done in a lab, but the management of production can also be better, be more efficient. Instead of overplanting, taking that yield, producing palm oil, and maybe quite a bit of that going to waste for our industry in the room. Now we say we can do it in the lab, we can produce exactly the amount we need for our production. And we've just made this entire process more efficient, more sustainable. These are the types of innovations we're looking at today. This is today, not the future. But let's pause. A lot has been said. Let's pause a bit and think about how we can really tackle these problems. Humanity's ability to see is quite interesting. We have the ability to see the entire light spectrum, which, if you look around, is every color in the room. But there's more in our world, in our reality, which is called the electromagnetic spectrum. As humans, we don't have the ability, unfortunately, to see this yet. But animals can see it. Animals can see the electromagnetic spectrum, right? Heat, things like this. So the question now is, something for us to think about, how can we solve global problems like biodiversity, like climate change, like social inequalities, given that we see the world as we are, not as it is, yet we have global problems. The whole world is facing heat waves. How can we solve this through our perception when all of us perceive the world in a different way? I'll leave you with that as we dive into our current trends. So now we're moving forward into the future, thinking about how to solve this problem, these problems, more than one. Circular economy is a big one, particularly in your industry. It's well featured in the Adina's Trends report. About 20 to 40% of cosmetics products gone to waste, landfill. Wow. Even I was shocked when I read that. I was like, 20 to 40%. Why? Again, I always want to know why, because if you understand the why, then you can fix the problem, correct? So the more you dive into it, you realize at its essence, a big part of the why is a design problem. The design, similar to Palmless, the design of the ingredient list, the design of the packaging. It's a design problem. We're not being creative enough. We're not diving deeper into what we're creating and asking those questions. Reporting and a shift into renewable energy. So reporting has become extremely maybe tedious for some of us in the room, but it's important because it drives transparency. So similar to Adina's trends report, it's quite literally a report. So without it, we wouldn't really be able to know all these things that are happening that are now being public, right? So hey, we want to know what's happening. We want to know, and in order to know, people need to talk about it, the good and the bad, right? So oftentimes companies shy from disclosing bad things that happen, but actually in the bad there's learnings, right? And this is how we improve. This is simply a tactic of how we communicate that error, if you will, that we made, that mistake, and then being able to correct it, which there are reporting guidelines for that. But these are some trends we're looking at. So we understand that we have these challenges, right? Biodiversity loss, climate change, resource mismanagement, social inequalities, and we have these trends in order to solve those problems, right? Circular economy, reporting, renewable energy. How does technology play into this? How are we leveraging our technology that is today and into the future in order to make these problems easier to solve? We've done it before, right? We did it when we created agricultural tools and created tribes, all the way to the cotton gin and the printing press. Again, this is not anything new. Humanity has been doing this through a sustainable-ish process as much as we possibly can in order to survive and thrive. Again, sustainability is not new. But now we have new tools. We have new technology. We have what everybody loves to say, AI. So how is AI practically in the field helping us with sustainability? I'm sure many of you have seen in the news forest fires happening in Australia, happening in California, happening in Sweden, just happening everywhere it seems, right? Fires everywhere. How are we now tackling these fires with AI? Well, now we know through sensory information where the patterns, where the fire is going to next, right? The patterns the fire is actually moving in, the speed of rate in which it's moving, etc. So now our firefighters, we can deploy water, which is also scarce, more efficiently. So again, these are some practical ways that our data, our technology, is able to tackle some of these problems. From an ingredients perspective, blockchain into the supply chain is being deployed. Perhaps not to the speed and scale that we would like, but soon enough, right? These technologies are exponential. They increase quite quickly upon adoption. Being able to trace everything from where the product was originally planted to the distributor, to the manufacturer, to the end client. So the end client scans a QR code and can visually see that timeline. The technology enabling us to verify that supply chain is blockchain. So again, all these technologies coming into the fields, many fields, as mentioned earlier, sustainability is cross-range, industry agnostic, helping us tackle these problems. So let's say we understand the sustainability concept at this point, we understand some of its implications, applications, but maybe we feel like we're not mature enough to implement some of these technologies. Maybe we feel like we don't know enough to implement some of these strategies. Don't worry. These are 4 different case studies around the manufacturing industry, which have done very, very simple things that have increased their efficiencies. At the top, these are companies from all over the world as well. We have what they call leak day maintenance, which was fascinating to me when I read this report. All they did was every single day, someone was in charge of walking through the facility and making sure there was no leaks. That's it. A procedure that was done. Another really interesting example of that is lean design. So the way your actual facility is designed. Do you have this machine there, that machine there? So I guess taking back to the old Henry Ford assembly line, right? This is an old style of production, quite literally Industrial Revolution times. We haven't innovated. That's obviously wrong. We need to innovate now with a different mindset because we're in different times and humanity needs to thrive. So quite literally, that's what we've done. Reducing costs by 65% simply by redesigning their manufacturing facility. Obviously increasing their efficiency, energy use. Another example of that is being able to harness the heat that their own manufacturing facility was producing to link their heat to their power grid and essentially generate their own energy in-house. Again, things that are being done today don't require much investment and we could see a return. Another example goes back to your ingredient list. I think the a leak a day and the ingredient list are probably the most low-hanging fruits for any manufacturing company out there. Creating a list, right, so vetting your products, actually taking the time to understand where your products come from, what are their potential impacts, rating them, having a scale of risk. Simply doing that, they've been able to reduce 1.1 million pounds of organic compounds that would otherwise become waste for them. So again, these are low-hanging fruits that can be done today as actionable implementations. When we think of future trends, oftentimes we don't really know, it's like a magic ball, right? It's like, okay, how can we predict what's actually going to take the industry by storm? And should it, right? Should it? Again, we should ask why. I'm sure, AI is all over the news. If you're not using AI, you're falling behind. It's seen as the next big thing. And they might be right. It may be the next big thing. But again, if we've learned anything from our sustainable journey historically, is that these tools are just that, tools. It's how we use the tool that will make our future sustainable or not. There has been studies where some of these chatbots, some of these ChatGPTs, if you will, you can ask them, you can prompt them to develop models for good, but also to develop models for bioweapons, for bad. So it is that combination of ESG, if you will, mainly the G. Oftentimes the G gets overlooked. The G is essentially your strategy. The G is your boundaries. How far are you willing to go as a company, as a country, globally? But it really starts at your individual level, right? Do you purchase that or do you not? Do you implement a new technology in your life or do you not? As a company, will you begin to be a steward of a certain technology in a certain way? Right, so again, okay, we're using ChatGPT, but do we have any rules around how we use it? Because every tool that we implement will have an impact. So these are some of the trends that we see evolving, right? Big data and sustainability. Emerging technologies, so this is quite literally new innovation. So for example, how to harness energy, how to produce energy, right? So everyone I'm sure is familiar with solar, nuclear, water, right, energy. Recently, there's also been innovations around being able to store heat with sand. Again, new innovations. Or being able to create a compound out of chemicals and create more efficient energy streams that can feed into the grid quicker. Or in the food industry, right? We have so many alternatives to meat. So these innovations are happening. And they're going to continue happening, but it's about adoption. It's about understanding if they're really better than the alternatives. And should we use them? Oftentimes, personally, in my life, people ask me, again with the cars, everybody wants to talk about EVs. They say, oh, should I buy a Tesla or like a Nissan Leaf, like some other EV car? And as a consumer, if we care about these things, it now becomes our responsibility to understand that technology. What is the difference between these two cars? Yes, they're both EVs, but besides, let's say, pricing and marketing, what is that car's actual impact? How is a company itself, through the trend of reporting, managing their supply chain, their people? Has anybody in the room adopted any of these trends as of today? Whether it be circular economy in your products, or data, large data sets? Yes, I see nodding, yes. So now that we've been able to conceptualize sustainability, we've seen its evolution through time, since our tribal days to our innovative technology and some of the negative consequences that caused, to our overwhelming reporting and fascination with data and wanting to understand this problem in order to fix it. I think most importantly is our perception of it. How we are perceiving sustainability. Are we perceiving it in a way in which we're trying to make our lives better, or the lives around the people around us better? Is there a difference? In sustainability, there's a term called stakeholder engagement. Very often gets overlooked. It means talking to everybody. It means going back to our tribal times and understanding that the power of communication, of collaboration, and community is where it all began. Now we've just named it stakeholder engagement. But really, this is in our nature as humanity. And now we've systematized it, which is fine for efficiency. But maybe we're not doing this well enough. And we've put technology to replace what is human. When it's all said and done, when we understand sustainability or don't, when we want to do something good or don't, sustainability is a values game. So the question becomes, what do we value? Do we value humanity, the existence of humanity? Do we value our diversity, our diverse languages and cultures? Do we value our clean air when we go outside? Do you value your purified, clear water? Do you value your health and your safety? Do you value your life? If we do, which I assume all of us here do, then we would begin to think about being able to quantify the impact of our actions. Because if we can quantify the impact of our actions and have some perspective of what those impacts actually cause to ourselves and society, then and only then can we measure what matters. And when we measure what matters, we begin to think and value ourselves. Truly.